So I'm going to try to attempt to tell you how ego lifting is good for you. Trust me, I tried to phrase that 1,000 different ways, but none of it sounds good. Alright, so let's start off to what is ego lifting. Ego lifting is trying to lift what you can't, but trying to make it your normal lift without training to actually lift the weight that you're trying to lift. So ego lifting is like this poor sap right here. Going down and not being able to get back up. But here's the thing. They try to make it an actual lift or an actual rep. But here's the thing about ego lifting. Of course you're allowed to try to go and set for new maxes and everything like that. But when you try to make it your normal weight, it's just not going to happen. Or at the very least, the way that you think. Now here's where it gets confusing. So not bodybuilding, definitely not bodybuilding. This is only for strength training and maybe powerlifting and, very certain aspects of these sports. When you are trying to achieve, like, let's just say you can do 135 bench for 5 reps, right? And then you want to try to do, like, you just add some 2.5s. You want to try to do 140 for 5 reps. You are most likely not going to have perfect looking reps. It's just an attempt of trying to get. You could probably rep out 3 with good reps. You're probably going to have 2 that don't look good and is legitimately too heavy. But the thing is that it's just an attempt. And you try to do as controlled as possible but you don't repeat it. You don't try to be like, oh, I could just do 140 now. I'm going to rep out 5 very ugly reps. No, you just try to attempt it. That is good ego lifting. Now, am I just calling attempts for new PRs as an ego lift? Yes, because you have no idea if you can do it or not. Because let's just say you're on a machine, motorcycle's really damn loud outside. So let's just say that you're on a machine, right? Let's just say you're on a fly machine. You go out, you're doing your thing. Let's just say your base weight is like 50 pounds, whatever. It doesn't really matter what the weight is. Let's just say you can rep out like a good 12 reps. But then, here's the thing. You're like strong to where you can get close to maxing out the machine, but you're not maxing out the machine, right? Then you go down, like, let's just say, instead of 50, you go down to 60. 60, you could probably rep it out for a lot of 12 reps, but it's not going to look that good. But here's the deal. When you try to jump and try to create a little bit more strength, and let's just say you go up to your 1 rep max, let's just say that's like 115, go down to 115, it's relatively easy, because it's a machine, to go up. But then, as a machine, then you go down to like, let's just say 125. You try to lift it up, and it gets stuck at a certain portion, and you're like jittering the entire way up. Maybe you complete the rep, maybe you don't. That's the downside, but the upside of ego lifting. You look like you have no idea what you're doing, but here's the thing. It's just an attempt. That's all it is. If you treat it like just an attempt, because you're just trying out a new weight, because you have no idea if you can do it or not, and you're doing it in a very controlled way, in a controlled environment, you are ego lifting, but you're doing it correctly. Now, one huge misconception that happens a lot when people are just training for strength, they're not necessarily do bodybuilding, they might do bodybuilding aspects, but their goal is to lift as much weight as possible. One way, it's definitely not the best way, one way that people try to do it is so they do, like, let's just say a working set, let's just say 5 sets of 5, 3 sets of 3, whatever, right? They go down, but then, after they do the main working set, they just go, let's just say, to their like 2 rep to 3 rep max. They try and do a heavier weight than they're used to after a certain number of training days of just doing their regular weight. This is where ego lifting gets misconstrued as horrible or as an ego lifting. Ego lifting to ego lifting. So what happens is, person goes down, they don't really know if they can handle the amount of weight for that many reps. They go down, they go back up, oh, rep 1, rep 2, and then rep 3, I can't really get the weight, and then you drop the weight. This is where ego lifting gets a bad name because people think that since they didn't get the rep, it's bad. It's just bad. Or another example that I catch myself doing is looking at partial reps. Partial reps for an athlete is very, very important. I did, and still kind of do partial reps when I did swimming, golf, and football. Like, partial reps were just kind of key for hip mobility, hip drive, and all of that. Every single sport that I did involved some type of major hip drive. So that's the main example I'm just going to do. Now, of course, people doing half squats, I'm going to use the half squat as an example, right? So people go down for a half squat. They try to drive themselves back up as hard and as fast as possible, making sure that their hips are the main focus, not really their legs. That's the reason for the half squats, because that's where the hips are going to mostly be engaged for the entire lift. When you go down to the full squat, you have your thighs, your main part of the legs, they go up first, and then that's where they hit. But as soon as they start reaching to about like halfway to a little bit less than halfway, that's when your hips really start to actually drive into the actual lift. And then you get the weight back up. And when it comes to just doing half reps, of course, you're going to most likely be able to do a little bit more weight than what you're doing for your full squat. So let's just say your base weight is 135. You're going to do a full squat. Let's just say you can hit it for 10. Then you go up to, let's just say, 145 when you're doing your half reps or your hip drive. Now, don't get me wrong. A lot of people, they just do half squats and they think that it's a full squat. Don't get me wrong, I understand. But when it comes to people watching half reps and they're looking at a football player, they're like, oh, football players aren't even doing full reps. This is insane. And no, they're doing correct reps. It's just not for the thing that you're thinking about. And then that's how you can get misconstrued. And now what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you an ego lift that I did before I had my back surgery for scoliosis. This is one of the better examples that I personally have as to what control is for an ego lift or for a weight that you're just trying to do, but you have no clue if you can do it. Alright, I had to go to TikTok, or to my TikTok page, because I had no idea where it was on my phone. So this is it. So this is the main example I'm going to be using. So I have 235 pounds on the bar. My max is at 220, 225 at my very best. 235 I know I cannot do, but at the time I was just like, I'm getting scoliosis surgery in about 2 weeks from this point, so I'm just going to be like, why not? Okay, so here's everything to ego lift correctly. So, as you see, I have a spotter that has been training for like 20 plus years. He knows what he's doing, right? I have safety racks. I don't even have clips on the side of the bar just in case that something goes wrong with my spotter. Then I can move the weight out of the way. Everything is safe. I have wrist wraps. I have a belt. I'm wearing the proper shoes. I'm doing everything that I possibly can for if something to go wrong, that it's kind of okay if it does. Or the worst outcome will not happen. So we go into the lift, right? Set up. It's about to help me unrack the weight. I go up. No matter what, here's the deal. So, even though my spotter is touching the bar, he's just making sure that it guides to the correct position of my chest. He's not lifting up, but he just made sure to move it up or down so it hits the correct position on my chest. Still letting me feel at least still feel at least 225 pounds down. So I'm mostly in control on the way down. It hits my chest. Now here's the main part. So I had a very good drive up, but then at the point of around 3 to 6 inches, that's when he actually started to lift up with me, so I didn't hurt myself. Because again, this is weight that I have never done. He already spotted that I was going to most likely drop the weight above myself, so he got the weight up, He adjusted to what was needed, and now he's slightly letting go of the weight to try to let me push a little bit more with that weight about the rest of like what, 3 or 4 inches up. So, and I say again, this is just an attempt on weight that I haven't done before or I haven't lifted before. I've attempted the weight, but with a sling. That probably made the weight like 185. I could rep it out for probably like 3 to 5. But when it comes to correct ego lifting, it should only be an attempt. It shouldn't be you trying to just train with that weight. Except maybe you try the weight, like let's just say you fail the attempt. 3 weeks later, you try to attempt again, and hey, and you try to see improvements that you have done and improvements that you still need to do for you to actually create a legitimate, correct rep with the weight. What my spotter did is on the way down, he just made sure to guide the bar to make sure it went to the correct part of my chest, and then on my way up, all he did was, so what's it called? So think of it like so he did this, right? All he did was just make sure that it stayed on the correct path. He lifted, he did a slight lift up when I drove up, and then he let go about midway to where I had the rest of the weight. This is how you correctly ego lift and try to create a correct attempt. You still try to force your body to feel that weight, but of course, with a really good spotter, you can spot where you will have the weight and where you'll die with the weight. It also helps. Now again, this isn't for bodybuilding, it's more for strength training, when you're just trying to get a nice 1 rep max in. And of course, you know, if you're an athlete, you do the partial reps, but hopefully this clarifies at least some of the stuff to where it's misconstrued as ego lifting.